Guy, the Fab Four announced after the bell last night. Incredible, incredible. And obviously, I think you're going to need to address your hatred of the Beatles. By the way, I don't understand it, but I think people need to know why.
I wouldn't say it's a hatred of the Beatles, but they are definitely not in my top 10 bands of all time. They probably struggle to make the top 20, if you want me to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I appreciate what they did, but they're not nearly the band that people suggest that they are.
I mean, look,
go back and listen to the early Beatles stuff, and that is sophomoric high school band. I won't use the word shit, but I'll say,
no,
and don't at me.
What are you talking about? I mean, first of all, your top 20 is littered by, REO Speedwagon and Carole King. So, I mean, I don't.
You're wrong. See, you're wrong about that. I thought you were going to say it's littered by Southern rock bands like the Allman Brothers, like Leonard Skinner.
I've listened to more Southern rock than you have. So, let's not even go down this road. The Fab Four folks who are watching, that's Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. And they reported, and the market's been kind of hanging on a dime's edge. I think first of all, the earnings last night, I think that's a sigh of relief. I really do. I think even though at least at last glance, Apple was down, a fair amount, and it's the biggest stock in the market. I think the trends and the signs of the most important companies across the board in their core business were great. No one dropped a donut. So I don't know. Quick thoughts, and then I think we need to talk about the individual members of the Beatles. We need to compare them to these stocks. We need to talk Beatles albums and see if you even know any.
No, I do know Beatles albums, number one. And it's not, listen, I'll put on Please Please Me or I Want to Hold Your Hand the night before, all the early Beatles stuff. I have time for it. As a matter of fact, if you go to my Spotify playlist, there are probably 15 to 18 Beatles tunes on it. But, I'm not one of these people that pretend, the Beatles are the greatest band ever, because that's what they think. That's what they think they should say.
How many songs on your Spotify list? Because you
680, 689 at last glance.
All right, but think about what you just said. So you're basically saying, if you're saying 15 to 18 songs out of 680, you're saying basically 2.5% to 3% of your songs are Beatles songs? Come on, man.
Fair?
Then you must like the Beatles. You must like the Beatles. All right. So anyway,
you make a fair. I think you make a fair point. But I think, like, for example, Zeppelin, I probably have 28 or so Zeppelin songs, and I think they're only, if I'm probably wrong, but I think they're only about 71 or so Zeppelin songs in their library. Just putting it out there. So anyway, but whatever. It's neither here nor there. In terms of this quarter. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it was good enough to sort of stabilize what was until yesterday a pretty turbulent market this week. Obviously, we'll see what happens today. Yeah. I thought Facebook had a huge run up into earnings, so the fact that it's sort of either side of unchanged, to me, it's not a huge deal. I think the one to really come around with, and you're going to probably echo this, I think the Google quarter was ridiculously strong, and I'll let you sort of opine a bit on that.
Well, I mean, the Google quarter, and I'm going to trace it right into. So, look, first of all, Amazon to me is John Lennon. Apple's Paul McCartney. Google is George Harrison, because I think underappreciated genius at what they do, and arguably you can make a strong case that might be the best musician of the bunch. But I'll let people at me on Twitter about this. The fact that Google got to 5 billion on YouTube, and this is just another one of these revenue centers, and we haven't even talked about their incubator of other things, or whatever they call it.
Other bets, I believe.
Other bets. To me, Google trades at a discount to this group, largely, maybe, even relative to Facebook. And to me, it's rock solid, as was George Harrison, although apparently he was hard to get along with. Poor Ringo, man. I don't know who are you making Ringo here? Because
I don't think Ringo. By the way, Ringo was a character in one of the Wyatt Earp movies. I think the one that Kurt Russell did. Ringo was one of the villains, one of the guys with the red bandanas.
I love Ringo. So,
but in terms of Ringo, the drummer, I don't think he was as horrible a drummer as Paul McCartney would lead you to believe.
As a drummer, I'm telling you, he's not. He's not. And his son, Zach Starkey, his Ringo's son. He's the drummer for the Who I think pumped life and heartbeat back into the Who in the early millennium. Anyway, but he's an incredible
but
drummer.
let me tell you what I think the problem is, and this speaks to why bands break up. I think the fact that Paul McCartney thought and probably was a better drummer than Ringo Starr, that's where the problem was. Because as you know, they used to let Ringo in, he used to lay down his drum track, he used to leave, and then McCartney used to do a drum track by himself. McCartney, in terms of the band talent-wise, it's George Harrison, in my opinion, McCartney number 2, Lennon 3, Ringo, not a distant fourth, but number 4.
No, but wait, just thinking about what you just said, right? So McCartney's Apple, and you talked about the versatility, and Apple. What they showed you is, and what they continue to show you, and why the stock is re-rating. And if you listen to the analyst on our show last night, he said this is a 35 times company when this company was struggling at 15, 14 times earnings only a couple of years ago. But the services stream, the wearables, what's going on with some of those services that they think are going to be very exciting, both in fitness, Apple Music, but the Apple Plus and all of the TV streaming. But the core business is the 5G. I almost think of 5G as playing left-handed, by the way, which is one of the cool things about McCartney. But anyway, and whereas Amazon, the innovation there, I mean, Lennon was on the leading edge of that, and the guy dressed kind of strange, and by the end he was definitely out there, but I think he was the innovator of the band.
I think he was, Lennon McCartney in terms of songwriting duos, top 3, if not number 1. Let's just put it out there. But Lennon in terms of musician and vocalist, I mean, pedestrian at best. And I'm gonna just throw this in here just to mix it up a little bit. Obviously, you know what my favorite band is. It's Led Zeppelin. In terms of the musicians in that band, ranking them, and you know where I'm going here. John Paul Jones, number 1. Yeah. Bonham, number 2. Jimmy Page, number 3. And Robert Plant, who maybe in the studio he had his chops, but I mean, as a live performer, Plant struggled for obvious reasons.
No, I think that's fair, and kudos to you from turning a Fab Four segment into one about Zeppelin. But that's Zeppelin deserves that, so I'm not going to get in your grill. And in fact, if I had to rank them, I'd probably be in the same place. We might as well do this with the Who right now, where clearly though the number 1 is Townsend, and that's we could go off on another tangent here because I would argue he was a top 5, maybe a top 3 most talented in rock and roll history. Sorry. And then you have to go with Keith Moon, but definitely the Ox coming in at number 3, John Entwistle. And I'm sorry, Roger, but I just
It's funny how the front men. It's funny how the front men of those bands fall to number 4. I differ slightly with you. I think Townsend is number 1. I'd give Entwistle number 2, just slightly over Keith Moon, and then Daltrey probably a distant 4, the same way Robert Plant is. Again, we're getting off topic here. I want to say something quick about Google, and this might sound wonky. It's not intended to be, but yesterday Google was up $50 during the day, another $120-something in the aftermarket. So that's about a 12% move. Think about that for a second. I would make this point, and you could say I'm wrong. I think this is what makes markets. After that move, I think Google on a valuation basis, given the earnings they reported, stock is actually cheaper than it was at the beginning of the day. Thoughts?
Now, I think it's an interesting idea, and this is exactly what Google needed as a stock. It's the same way that I think, Abbey Road right now is probably the most underappreciated Beatles album, and one that had so many different pieces to it that's my number 1 Beatles album. Guy, give me yours on the way out here. Don't be my Yoko, man. Come on, give me something good.
I'm not. Abbey Road, it's very predictable. Magical Mystery Tour, a lot of great tunes. I think an underappreciated album. I think people thought they sold out. They didn't. Yellow Submarine was a sellout album. I'm going to go Magical Mystery Tour, Tim.
The Magical Mystery Tour. We're out. See you tomorrow.
Later.